Hello folks, I'm chucking at you the inside my heads as if there was no tomorrow, and this time I picked a very convenient time control 1510 that should allow me to explain what's happening in great detail. So Sicilian main line, because that's the only thing that one should play against the Sicilian, because it is one of the most fun openings to play in chess. So when you have the opportunity to play against the Sicilian, then you do it properly. Sadly, a chess.com match came up in the meantime that I can't attend to now. I would like to use this opportunity while my opponent is thinking about whether to play g6, e6, e5 or knight f6, which are the best moves in this position. So I would like to grab this opportunity to advertise myself a little bit. I have created a Patreon website for myself where you can guys basically support my video making activities and get something in return, which is the main idea with this Patreon thing. Now it's really just in its first baby stages, where I sort of came up with the different tiers, the different amounts, and what I'm offering for them. But it's very fluid, and I'm more than happy to change it, because yeah, I would like to make sure that it's about the people who support the channel, and especially those who missed out on getting coached by me because of my very tight schedule. So I would like to give something back, but I have to play with whatever limited time I have. Now, please go and check it out. It's patreon.com/chesscoachandras. Same as my YouTube, same as everything. And now back to this game. We have played the Sveshnikov variation, which is a very fun line in the Sicilian for both sides to play, because it basically features a very fascinating duel between two things: dynamic features versus static features. So the main problem that black faces in this line is the d5 square and its absolute weakness, combined with a very ugly looking pawn structure. Now, whilst I claim that the pawn structure is very ugly, it is actually dynamic again, because black wants to play for f5 breaks and potentially play f5 again and conquer the whole center. He also has the two bishops. The one on g7 currently is horrid, but once again remember that he's trying to play for f5, and the one on c8 is rather good. My knight on d5 is an absolute stallion, but my other knight on a3 is absolutely terrible. If I could have this knight here, covering both d5 and f5, and I could hold this, then I would be absolutely winning in positional terms. So this is what I'm trying to do now by playing c3. I'm redirecting my knight towards e3. Now in this position there are two good moves for black. One of them is knight e7, the other one is castles, or f5 right away. They are totally fine both. They are two different main lines, but essentially they all have the same idea. Black wants to undermine my center as best as he can and swap pawns in order to open up files and diagonals. So yeah, I'm expecting either f5 or knight e7, no, or castles. These are the three moves that are okay here. Actually, I think after castles, bishop d3, he may be struggling a little bit with getting f5 in. So yeah, it's either knight e7 or f5 right now. And on f5 I will play bishop d3, then normally they castle, and then queen h5, which is not really the intention of creating a kingside attack, but once again, look at how much the bishop is pressuring e4 and f5, and how the queen is also covering f5 square. So yeah, these are all heavy positional concepts on both sides. And in this line, this is pretty much the only way to play for an advantage. The reason why knight b5 is the only good move here is because it's actually threatening to give a check here and create a very awkward positional setup where the pawns are separated. So black is forced to play d6. Any other move in this position is terrible. So if I come back, for example, to b3 after bishop b4 followed by d5, I'm already way worse. So f5 was played, correct move. Now after takes bishop takes pawn f5 again is not good because I have knight f6 check, and whatever takes me back, I then take the knight with the check and then the rook as well. So he either needs to play here bishop e6 or castles. Either way, the point is that he keeps on developing his pieces and not banking in too early on this one. Now bishop takes is not that good because after takes knight e7, f5 is hanging. So he's going to castle here if he knows theory. And the reason why I'm saying that is because castles looks a bit scary here. Because after ef5, bishop d5, f6 hangs the bishop and creates a mate threat. But in fact after pawn e4, f takes g7 and then rook e8, black is doing splendidly well because my king is stuck in the middle and he takes d3 threatened with check. That was probably a fairly long variation to follow, but can I? Oh no, I can't display moves while the game is going, so I can't quite show you that, and I don't consider it to be likely that this would come about. So yeah, we will see. What else is there? Yeah, not much else to be said. So if f4 immediately, then I might benefit from the fact that I haven't castled yet. So I could play, for example, g3, trying to undermine this pawn chain and forcing him to take. And after pawn takes back, all of a sudden, the two heavies on the h file prevent him from castling. If he doesn't know theory, then he will find it difficult to find castling. That's my first comment, because once again, it's very, very scary to allow ef5, bishop d5, f6. And if you don't know exactly that that's actually not dangerous, to have to calculate it through is very tricky. Which is, by the way, why essentially you need to learn your openings. And by learning your openings, I mean that you need to know them, but you also need to understand why you're playing those moves. Because playing castles here is not good enough if you don't know that it doesn't lose to ef5, because as soon as you become a little bit uncertain about whether your memory is serving you well or not, and you don't remember the justification or you can't understand why it's justified, you are not going to play the correct move. Yep, right. On the other hand, I don't really have any threats myself either. So even if black was to play a rather timid move, I wouldn't be able to do something very drastic immediately either. So I would probably just calmly continue my maneuver with knight here and then knight here and then knight in there to f5, which is still the only thing that is not looking picture perfect in my position. The rest of my pieces are really ideally placed, but the knight on a3 is just a disgrace. And that is the reason why this whole entire system works, because although I can create and force a lot of weaknesses in the black army, it comes at a very high cost that I had to move this knight 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6 times in the opening in order to achieve a respectable position. That is a lot of moves. And if you look at his dudes, this one made one move, this one made one move, this one made one move. So as far as economy and time investment is concerned, his development is far more effective than mine. And that is the dynamic feature that is sort of trying to counterbalance the static ones. The constant worry about the d5 square, the backward pawn on d6, the double f pawns. This is always targetable. Once my knight comes back to c2, pawn a4 is always a major pain in the backside, attacking these two pawns. Like many Sveshnikov endgames are dead lost because of that. Okay, so h6, for example, is a very timid move here because it doesn't address the main problem. He was worried about EF and then F6, so now he's going to castle. But the problem with that now is that he's too late, because after knight e3 he can't take and then play f5 because I'm over attacking that square. So he will have to push in, but then again knight f5. So maybe he's going to play f4 now. That's my best guess. To prevent knight e3. No, he didn't. So that was another strategical error. He had to play f4 here, because now after knight e3 I simply dominate the f5 square. And that should never ever happen in the Sveshnikov. So now, regardless of whether he takes or pushes, I get to occupy the f5 square, and that's... I'm not saying it's a game over scenario, but very close to it. So basically what's going to happen now is that my strategy about the positional aspect of the game are going to be more dominant over the dynamic ones, because he failed to play the position dynamically enough. So now if f4, then I jump into f5 and I'm dominating all the weak white squares. The bishop on g7 remained utterly passive, and there is no obvious attacking path for black to be seen. Likewise, if takes, bishop takes, and now even my bishop is gaining ridiculous power whilst denying f5 entirely. So that was his last chance here to play f4, thereby denying my knight's re-entry into the fray and getting ready for castles, and then play the second pawn to f5, still trying to crack the opening, sorry, the position open. Now he's a goner. Okay, takes, bishop takes. Now he's in, even have to watch out for motifs on the diagonal, but predominantly my ideal dream scenario would be to plant the bishop on f5, swap this for this, not by taking there of course, because then pawn takes would take away my d5 square. But if I could remove these two bishops from the board, that's a better way to describe or explain, and then put the knight on f5, that's picture perfect. So this is looking really, really good now. Look at how all of my pieces, by the way, it is really a really cool way to describe the importance of covering the piece that occupies the weak square. Yeah, so my knight is backed up by the bishop and the knight, so all my pieces are covering crucially important squares. f5 is impossible, d5 is heavily overprotected, and consequently he can't do a thing. Please note that the effect of the pawn on c3 was not only to allow me to come back, but also to deny black's knight's squares. So whilst my pieces have got beautiful potential squares to go to, he can't say the same about his position. Alright, so now we are going into an endgame, which I'm more than happy to do, because yeah, the structural issues are irreparable in black's position. Now I'm looking for an immediate win here with knight c7. I'm not sure if it's winning on the spot or not, because that attacks the rook and the knight here. So his only move after knight c7 is rook c8, and I just can't see an immediate victory there for me, which is very annoying because I thought I could. That hurts. Oh, actually, can I do knight b6 instead? Nah, because then rook b8, and once again Mr. Fluker gets away with murder. I can jump in here if I want to, that's one of my thoughts. The other one is just to play g4 and completely cement in his bishop down here. This is a toughie. Yeah, I'm going to go with g4, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I would like to solidify my advantages. It's a very annoying style to play against, and it takes a lot of effort, actually, funnily enough, to play like this, because you need to resist your urge to do something drastic and just build up the little advantages bit by bit. So Currently, I am dominating the d5 square and the f5 as well. However, he is now threatening to play f5, and if he were to play that, he would be better. Now, after knight f5, he has a chance to swap off a pair of knights, and then maybe sack a pawn away, thereby opening up the bishop's diagonal, and if bishop takes, then maybe b4, pressing these pawns. That's a motive. I didn't even want to allow that. I didn't want to even invite the possibility of that happening. So I just played g4, and by doing that, I basically separated these 3 pawns, and there is no way that he can ever use his bishop as long as this structure remains. Like, the bishop is useless on this diagonal, useless on this diagonal, and useless on this diagonal. So essentially, I'm playing with a piece up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my king here, a little bit closer to this pawn, keeping it on dark squares, because the dark square bishop can't harm me, and this way nothing can be taken by the bishop with check. It is just a precaution that I can't justify tactically, like there is no threat whatsoever, but you find that good chess players, when it comes to endgames, always put their king, well, not always, but tend to put the king on the opposite color of the enemy bishop, because that way you can always feel safe when it comes to checks, skewers, forks, pins, you name it. And now my plan, which I could have played by the way earlier, is to simply play for a4. Yep, here it comes. So now the problem for black is that he has to respond to it one way or another, and after takes, we have got a target. And endgames and targets, they go hand in hand together. Because whilst this structure is horrid for black, absolutely horrid, please note the blockade, I can't currently find something to hunt, so I needed to create a weakness. I'm not quite sure, I haven't made up my mind entirely whether to take with knight or bishop. Both have benefits. If I take with the bishop, after takes, knight takes, we are in the ultimate good knight, bad bishop scenario. However, there is an f5 move that bothers me, because, and remember this, I told you this many times, and I will repeat it still a lot of the times in the future, when you are playing an endgame where you are ahead, your only enemy is counterplay. And I want to deny even the hint of counterplay in this position. Yeah, actually I think that bishop takes, knight takes, f5, a takes b5, fg4, pawn b6 is winning for me. Yeah, it is winning for me. It's a fairly long variation, so takes. And the reason why I insist on calculating this, because thematically speaking, this is the correct move, because I really want this bishop off the board. So take f5, take b5, takes b6, rook across, rook f1, rook takes, king e3, rook takes b2, and after knight b4 back, he can't stop my pawn going in. If that was to come about, I would be very impressed with my calculation if that was how it played out. So let's see, bishop takes. I'm expecting, well, I mean, okay, maybe he doesn't want to take, but I had to check this variation, because this is the only way how his bishop is going to come alive, how his rook is going to come alive, which is a heck of a lot of pieces all of a sudden to come alive, considering that I could have kept everybody shut down by knight takes back. But then again, of course, that pawn is hanging, but so is that. So, yeah, bishop takes d5 was the thematic move, but as I said, I need to be careful, and I don't want to allow any sort of counterplay whatsoever, because structurally, this endgame is just getting better and better for me. Because now he has got his issues here, so either that is going to be a problem for him, or he will take me, I take back, whereupon a6 is now my #1 target that is going to allow me to win this game. So that's it. Takes, rook takes, bishop takes, knight takes, and then f5. And I was looking at a cute variation which sadly doesn't work, which was to take, rook takes, and then rook takes here, with the idea that if rook takes back, then knight check wins the rook. But sadly he has got an in-between check on f2. So if he were to take, after rook takes, bishop takes, knight takes, f5, I will have a bit of a calculation to do. Which is what I'm doing now, hence the silence. I don't know, maybe I'm overreacting this whole situation or over-worrying it, because I could simply take on f5, rook takes back and play king e2. And if the rooks were to double, I just cover back here, and then a6 is hanging, and after that d6 will hang too. So, yeah, cool bananas. Let's see what he comes up with. So yeah, while we are waiting, once again, the Patreon site is up. The descriptions of the different rewards are on the side. Please let me know what you think. Let me know how I could improve it, because as I said, it's really unclear at the moment, or I'm very happy to change it if the need arises. So let me know what you guys think. Okay, this is a very poor move, because it basically is a typical example of what one of my former coaches called pseudo activity. When you're doing something that looks like, yeah, I'm attacking a pawn, the reality is it's rubbish. I wanted to play b4 anyway. Like, one of my main plans in this position is to play b4, simply because these pawns are guarding each other, and now I can use this pawn very often to put more pressure here, and also to come along, to come over here. And in fact, the rook stands on b8 far worse than did on f8, because now f5 is no longer possible. So what he did basically was that he disallowed himself an extra possibility of plan. Did that make sense? Sort of. I'm struggling, it's getting late. So yeah, now it's becoming very problematic for him, because once my rook appears here, it's going to be a hell of a struggle to hang on to these pawns. And I even have further moves to actually improve the quality of my position. I can put another pawn here, I can push the king up here, potentially even get in here. And I did see rook b5, but c4 seems to me to be perfectly sufficient to cover everything, right? c4, and if bishop takes here, then knight takes back, always with the piece on the weak square. And now you can see that b4 is also safely guarded, so the rook will have to retreat. And now the only thing I need to look out for is e4 pushes, because that opens up the bishop's diagonal. But if the rook drops back to b8, now I will be able to play b5, capitalizing on the pin. And after a5, rook a1, I'm going to win the pawn on a5. Crystal clear, very logical, I would even say very instructional endgame play here. Not by me, but more by the fact that the position allowed us, or rather the gameplay allowed us to execute all these plans that are so typical of the Sveshnikov when one side is playing quite poorly. I mean, let's face it, if you want to demonstrate the main concepts of how to win with one side in a certain opening, you need a great deal of contribution from the other side. otherwise it's going to be a fairly complex struggle where nuances will decide the game. Whereas in an example like this, my opponent didn't stand a chance at all throughout the game. And it might not look like that from an outsider's perspective, but that's what it really is. So now we have achieved the dream scenario, good knight, bad bishop. Now I believe, because he has taken on d5, I can even come here. Because after e4 I can just take on a6, and if he takes my rook, I take his. So I don't even need b5, although I could do that, but I'm a bit reluctant to move these pawns up because they're so nicely guarded. My only concern now that I notice is that if I play rook a1, he has rook here attacking this pawn, and if I were to play king d3, then e4 check is annoying. So if I play rook here, rook c8, I might have to play b5, with which I'm contradicting to what I just said before. And then e4, rook takes, rook takes, rook c4, b6, b7 wins there. Okay. Well, let's give it a crack. Rook c8 is his only move. And then, oh, actually, on rook c8 I also have knight b6, winning on the spot, hitting the rook, and if the rook moves literally anywhere, I take on a6 guarding the knight. Yeah. More often than not, you find that when your position is structurally winning and everything indicates that you should easily convert an endgame, and you're struggling to find a line that actually justifies this feeling, you just need to look at a few other options, because there should be one, a crystal clear win in every single line. So once again, let's talk structure. Isolated pawn, backward pawn, and pawns fixed on the color of the bishop that makes this bishop utterly useless. Please note that this bishop once played to g7, and from that point on, which happened like 15 moves ago, it hasn't played a single role in the whole entire game. And sadly, it looks like the other player may have left the game, which makes me very, very sad, because I wanted to actually see how it would have played out. But, oh no, he's back. Good. I don't like to claim victories without actively winning the game. So let's see. Let's see. But now he's going to lose on time, sadly, so it looks like it didn't matter. Okay, so just a brief analysis, and because I had so much time to tell you everything during the game, I will just reflect on what's happening now. If rook here, then knight b6 is the winning move, hitting the rook, guarding the pawn. And for example, even if the rook comes here, I can just take. If rook b7, then I have a check and then move the knight. Or what would be a cool way to win this now, folks? I didn't even consider this option before. Okay, maybe b5 now. I think this is cleaner. And then just take the pawn or play b6. If e4, I just move up. Rook is covering c4. This one can't be captured because of the pin. Yeah, this is what I think is the safest way here to play it. Yeah, that's what would have happened. If rook here, then definitely knight b6, and then I just take this. And I'm 17 pawns up and easily winning. And any other case, I just take the pawn, and the b pawn easily wins the game. So I hope that you guys found this game instructive enough. That was actually a very good example once again about what to play for in the Sveshnikov as white and how not to play it as black, because he didn't enjoy any kind of initiative or vivid play, dynamism, tactics. None of it was present. It was all about me squeezing him
like a boa constrictor, if you like, and just exploiting weak squares and strategical weaknesses, the pawn structure, and so on. So I hope that you found it instructive enough, and I'll be back with more. And once again, please check out the Patreon site, comment on it, donate it if you like. Yeah, let's see how it works out. Thanks for watching. Bye.